There's one very interesting chapter. What do I mean by interesting? It just tells us something very important about Yeshua. It is chapter 9 from Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew. In this whole chapter, and that what is explained earlier, Yeshua wanders among the nation of Israel. This chapter 8 begins after he has finished the Sermon on the Mount. He descended from the mountain and he starts walking. And that what he does mainly in chapter 8 and 9 is not as much about him teaching, but it's mostly just helping people. And that's all. It's all founded on his compassion with his people. As soon as he descends the mountain after his great and strong pre-sermon, he starts healing people, a leper. Then he heals a centurion's servant. And coming into contact with non-Jewish people, so Gentiles. Though there's this no fleshly connection to Jews. But because he had the faith, after that, he heals the mother-in-law, Peter's mother-in-law, which which you should know is a big thing. To heal a mother-in-law. After that, he teaches and pities, calms the storm, and then he heals 2 demon-possessed men. So isolated, demon-possessed, sick people he heals. In chapter 9, he then heals a paralytic, a person who is paralyzed. And after that, and then he accidentally meets a tax collector. And the tax collector invites him to his home. Yeshua goes to him just to eat together. In verse 10, we read of chapter 9, then as Yeshua passed, verse 10, it was as Yeshua sat at the table in the house that, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and sat down with him and his disciples. And then in verse 11, we read, and when the Pharisees saw it, they said to his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? The Pharisees probably thought themselves to be bigger and stronger and much better because they carried forth the righteousness, and sometimes they even recalled and spoke out David's psalms, and they would question themselves, why do sinners live have a better life and an easier life than righteous ones? Why can these sinners be together with Yeshua and eat with him together? Why did he not call upon the good ones, the righteous ones? The question makes sense and is right. Why? Yeshua was not shy and was not ashamed to answer. And so in verse 12 and 13 we hear his answer. But when Yeshua heard that, he said to them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance."
Sondern die Kranken. Geht aber hin und lernt, was das heißt. Ich will Barmherzigkeit und nicht Opfer. Denn ich bin nicht gekommen, Gerechte zu berufen, sondern Sünder zur Buße.
Pay attention what he means by those who are sick here, the sinners. Those out of the perspective of righteousness and cleanliness would not even make sense to receive them because they are dirty with sin. But Yeshua received them and he ate with them. And after that, he teaches a little bit. After that, he heals even more people. He heals a woman who was losing too much blood. He heals the blind. And then towards the end of this chapter, he unmutes a man. And then at the end of the chapter, there's a conclusion in chapter 35. And Yeshua went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. You remember that Yeshua was in this moment, he was in his flesh at this point. He could only be at one point at one time. When he was leaving one building, he would not be in that building anymore. He was limited by his flesh and body with regards to where he could be at a given time. He walked a lot. Here it is written that he went through all the cities, all villages, teaching everywhere, preaching the kingdom, and healing sick. He worked hard. But even so, he understood that he cannot reach everyone this way, that he will not be able to heal everyone, because he can't be everywhere, given as long as he is in his flesh and his body. Then in verse 36, we read about what moved him, what motivation he had to move from one city to the other. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, because they were weary and scattered, like sheep having no shepherd. Here we see something that clearly
Messias charakterisiert.
personifies or characterizes our Yeshua, our Messiah. He has compassion.
Hatte
He
Mitgefühl mit den Menschen.
feels with the people. He feels their pain, and especially those who need him, especially with those who need his healing, be it physical healing or
Sei es
spiritual,
physische Heilung oder geistliche Heilung. Oder auch
or
seelische Heilung.
perhaps soul-related healing. He feels compassion with them. Today in our Torah passage,
Definition aus der Schrift hatten,
we read in Hebrews that the Messiah can sympathize with those who
mit denjenigen, die
suffer.
leiden, mitleiden kann.
He sees, and I'm saying this not the first time,
Oftmals darüber
he
gesprochen, sieht unseren Schmerz.
sees our pain and he feels with us. He's compassionate. He sympathizes. He suffers the same pain. The whole the complete Yeshua was fully God as well. Yeshua revealed to us what God is like, given how he behaves, and seeing how he behaves and how he feels with other people. That's a representative of how God is. He has also compassion with sinners. And that's something that I want us to pay attention to, especially today. The sick, not not the healthy, but the sick need a physician. The Pharisees felt very Yeshua, but Yeshua, he is clean and pure, but he still fell together with the sinners. Today, we think that if we walk on the street and we step into some kind of form of dirt, we become dirty. We think that if we are in a place where there's dirt everywhere, we will also be infected and become dirty. Whenever we are having something to do with dirt, logically, you become also unpure. It makes you dirty. And that's how the Pharisees thought. And that's not the first times that we read they thought about this. And Pharisees would say that how can you, Yeshua, be so pure and spend time with sinners? They make you dirty. And that is part of our Jewish thinking. Do you remember how Peter Peter could not even enter into the house of Cornelius, and God had to give him a vision with the animals, with the unclean animals, where the sheep was together with the pig at one spot, and Peter thought that I cannot eat the sheep because it was in one napkin, one bowl with the pig. But God showed that that's not how it should be. okay, there is
Das Schwein
a
und das
pig
Schaf.
and sheep, but when we're talking about a person, not one person, not one person is considered
Sollte im
dirty
Augen Gottes
in
etwas
God's eyes,
Supernormales sein.
because
Weil
whoever, it
geschrieben
is
steht, dass
written,
jeder, der Gott
looks
sucht,
for
heilig ist.
God is pleasing to Him. It doesn't matter how sinful you are, as long as you search and look for God, He is looking for you. And in fact, He was the first one to start this search. Yeshua opened His door for those who are not worthy. He gave a spot at His table who others considered to be not clean. And so they were unclean. But the thing was, the whole part is that the whole sense is not that you will become dirty as you step into dirt, but it's rather that the unclean people can become clean as they come close to righteous people. Not Yeshua, but become dirty when spending time with sinners, but rather that sinners would become clean, would be cleansed while spending time or coming close to the righteous, but rather this holiness would come upon the dirty, the sinners. And this is what Yeshua very clearly showed us, how it was not shown, represented in the Tanakh. For me, these chapters are very important. They show us Yeshua's relationship to sinners. Why is it important to me? Because I too am a sinner. I too need compassion. I too am looking for Him. But still I am not worthy. But it does not matter. He does not care about that, because His holiness can make me cleaner. And Yeshua told us, the good shepherd will leave his 99 sheep. He's ready to leave his 99 sheep in order to look for that one forlorn lost sheep. And when he finds him, he rejoices. And he brings this sheep back. The sinner is very important to Yeshua. Today we read in the Torah, we read how Pinhas stopped God's punishment for Israel. And we also heard a good commentary today on that matter. One person stood in for the whole nation, so that whole nation would not die, so that one person to cleanse. But that's only one side of the coin. There is another side. What does God think with regards to that sinner? Yeshua showed us God does not merely feel anger. He feels pain. He feels compassion. He wants to bring this person, the sinner, back to Him. Do you remember what the first generation of believers considered to be important in John, in the Gospel of John?
Als die
As the
Frau,
one woman
in Unzucht
who
ertappt wurde
who
und zu
was
Jeshua gebracht wurde,
found committing adultery and brought to Yeshua, that those who
es steht geschrieben, dass
it is
diejenigen,
written
die
that those
ertappt
who
haben, nicht
found
genug
her doing
Beweismittel
it did
hatten,
not
dass sie
have enough
versprochen wurden.
proof to stone her. They could not, on the basis
Oder sie
of
konnten sie nicht umbringen, nicht
on the
steinigen
basis
auf der
of
Grundlage des Gerichts.
on the basis of justice, they could not stone her and kill her. And so when she was left alone with Yeshua, he told her, I do not judge you. Go ahead and do not sin no more. He knows she was sinning. I think he knew that the accusations were justified. But he did not look for justice or punishment, but he showed compassion. He looked for forgiveness. He showed how his actions showed that he was willing and he wanted her to come back to him so that she could become clean. And in the prophets talk about it, how God does not want the death of a sinner, but rather that the sinner should return, come back to God. And Yeshua talks about that. Not only once. He came to give the eternal life. He did not come to judge, but rather to save. Not to reject, but accept. Not to accuse, but to forgive. Yes, God is just. He does punish. But that is one side of the coin. There's another. And it is connected with God's compassion. We can be so righteous with you. And looking as we look upon others' sin, we can, metaphorically speaking, throw stones at them. Sometimes because we feel superior through that. Sometimes because we have righteous indignation, so to say. We have a tendency to call things by their name and to say that a certain matter is sinful, and it is correct to do that. But with what motivation? When Yeshua saw the sinners, he knew that they were sinners. He was aware of it. He was aware of what they're doing. And he knew that it was wrong. But he had compassion. He felt their pain. They do not know what they're doing. Even when he was killed, when he was being killed, and the worst crime was coming, the worst crime in the history of mankind, the killing, the crucifixion of the Messiah of the world, he did not accuse those who were committing it. He had compassion with them. Can you imagine? he was actually giving excuses for their action. In his mind, in his heart, he was looking for excuses for them. In other words, they're killing me. Poor ones. They do not know what they're doing. They just do not understand. Before you take a stone in your hand or a weapon to a spear in order to stab a sinner, try to understand him. Try to feel compassion with them. Even more, try to excuse him. Try to put yourself on their spot. Even if your life is more righteous, you're lucky, and maybe him not so much. You're not an alcohol addict. Good for you. In contrast with that other one, you do not take drugs. Lucky you, in contrast to others. You do not steal. Thank God that you may perhaps be in a different position. I do not want to say that sin is not sin. Disobedience with regards to his commandments is a sin, and I am not excusing it. But I'm also not throwing stones. Because perhaps these people do not know what they're doing. I would like to be like Yeshua when I would look as he looked upon the sinners, and he did not merely think sinners, dirty, unrighteous, they're behaving unrighteously, but to look upon them and feel compassion. When I evangelize and tell other people about Yeshua, if I don't have compassion with them, why am I even talking with them then? I still have to preach, independent of what feelings I have. But if I want to do it the way Yeshua did it, then I must have compassion. In chapter 9 of Matthew, verse 37 and 38, then he said to his disciples, "The harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." More people evangelizing are needed. We need more teachers. We need more of those who heal and help. But I want to turn your attention to the point, to the context that he is saying this. In the context that he is compassionate, he feels their pain. I call upon and encourage every one of us to be similar like Yeshua in our compassion, in what sympathy we have. To think about this for a minute. What do you feel when you see a non-believer? What do you feel when you see a sinner? What do you feel when you see a terrible person? And think about what Yeshua felt. He went to the cross, not for the righteous, which do not exist. He went to the cross to save the sinners, to die and to shed his blood, to cleanse such a dirty one by the blood of Yeshua. And at one time, he looked at me. He knew me then, before I was not existent yet, but he knew everything about me. He thought about me, and he had compassion with me. And for me, for my sake, he went to the cross 2,000 years ago. Yeshua saw you. He looked at you in his plan, in the divine plan, and he had compassion. He looked at you as a sinner, exhausted by life, and he felt compassion. And for your sake, he went willingly to the cross. For them, I am ready, willing to give my life. That's what Yeshua felt. And through this, he presented himself as God. Now imagine the worst, unrighteous, dirty, worst sinner possible. That you can remember from your life. Think about what Yeshua thought with regards to that sinner. What he felt. He felt exactly the same way as he does about you. And as you see other people, remember what Yeshua felt. When you evangelize, when you share your testimony and be a witness, remember what Yeshua felt. When you fear to talk about Yeshua, remember what Yeshua felt. Why am I talking about this? Why exactly today? Because in the past week, we had STEP. It's an evangelizing conference, and I went out several times during the past week onto the streets. And when I stood there outside with them, it was not the best, not the most appropriate places with, not the most nice spots with a lot of weird people.
merkwürdigen und sündhaften Menschen.
And when I was there,
Da war,
I
so
felt
ein Mitleid mit ihnen.
such a compassion with them. When you see a sinner, look at him the way Yeshua did. Independent of what you think about yourself and how others think about you. Yeshua wants to be with you. He accepts you independent of your righteousness, independent of your sin. This is the Messiah we have. This is our God. Holiness and sin cannot be mixed up together. And exactly because of this, Yeshua, feeling compassionate with the people, he died for the sin, for sinners such as you and I, so that not he would become dirty forever, but rather that we would become clean forever. Just say, Yeshua, Yeshua, I need you. It seems to me that in a way I am sick.
Ich habe den Eindruck, dass ich in irgendeiner Weise krank bin.
Especially when it comes to sin. Thank you for feeling compassionate with me, feeling pity for me. And I ask you to forgive me, cleanse me, fill me with your Holy Spirit. I need you very. I am grateful for your compassion and love for me. And I want to be with you. If you said that to Yeshua, just know that he will not reject you. He will not say no. He died for that. He rose, resurrected because of that, so that you could say that, so that you could be with him. He will not reject you because he loves you. It may sound odd, but he does really love you. And if you said that, just know that you are with him. Pray. Read the Bible. Tell others about it. Come into contact and have fellowship with believers. Hold close to Yeshua. And feel the compassion that Yeshua did, especially when you see people, the sick. It's a very important godly word. And for us it's exactly equally important. Thank you.